All right, before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. Um, Today's record, everyone's muted, but we will be able to take questions at the end, and an email will be sent to you today with a recording of the webinar. So, thanks everyone. Hope you're doing well today. This is our webinar on navigating supply chain issues with Upchain. My name is Jeremy Smith. I'm a solutions consultant here at IMAGINiT Technologies, and where I focus on PLM and PDM. Quick little bit about me. Mechanical engineer with over 20 years of experience in product design and manufacturing. I've also done some stints in DevOps and system administration. This is really nice because these two areas are basically the intersection of PLM. And that's where it sits. It uses your IT infrastructure and back end systems to span across to help bring information about your product and your product design across those systems. Got to get this part out of the way about us at IMAGINiT Technologies. I'm not going to read all of this, but really what we're getting at here is that we have a huge team of technical experts across a variety of industries, everything from design and manufacturing to building and construction. Basically what we like to say is if you design or make something, we can help elevate that and be a partner in your success. And what I'm going to be talking about today is Autodesk's new PDM PLM platform called Upchain. This is a complete cloud-based solution combining PDM and PLM. So you got both your document and CAD management with your check-in, check-out capabilities, but then also your larger lifecycle management capabilities down with revision control and ECOs and business processes and more of that information built out on top of the CAD models. And what we're going to be talking about in this webinar, when we say supplier management and elevating supply and getting rid of supply chain issues, we're going to be focusing on the supplier management portion of Upchain. However, as you can see, the system does a lot of other stuff like most good PDMs would, PLMs would. We're going to touch on a couple of these other areas because they all do interact with the supplier management. But what we're going to be showing how all of these things can interact and tear down barriers for your information, not only within your department, but also outside of it. So when I talk about supplier collaboration here, since Upchain is cloud-based, you can allow access to your suppliers and manufacturers into the system with limited permissions to only see what you would like them to see. And what that consists of is the parts that they are listed as suppliers on, you can send RFQs to them, and they can also be part of seeing revision changes and information on that part so that you can ensure that not only if your engineer is working on Rev 2, that your procurement or your purchasing individual is issuing POs for Rev 2, and that your supplier is actually building to Rev 2, and then QA at the end is inspecting it to Rev 2. Right? There's a lot of strength, there's a lot of power in having that confidence and not having to always double check those things. And that's what Upchain can bring is that confidence in removing barriers by ensuring that everyone is working on a common set of data and information. So what we will do now is fire up Upchain in a web browser and run through how some of these barriers are removed. So here we have the landing page of Upchain. As you can see, we're just in a web browser, and as I mentioned, it's a cloud-based software. So everyone
would get their own tenant when you log in, and would see the projects that you are assigned to, right? So not just everything in the company, there's even granularity based on permissions and roles on a project level. So here you can see all the projects that I'm a part of and the dashboard that I land on, with, a summary of my assignments and any activities that I've recently been doing. From there, I'm going to jump right into a project, and I'll jump into this clamp. So when we do that, we see a more specific project management type dashboard, again, with your assignments and things that are due, but also project progress. This would be like a landing page that a PM would be tracking for this type of project here. There's also a design look, which is more specific to an engineer, and so it would show any recently created parts or things that they may have checked out, and also, again, tasks and ECOs, or those types of business processes that you may be a part of at this time. As we go down, this is the important thing here that we want to show is these are all the top level assemblies that are in this project. So when I click on this one, we actually get the view of the BOM right here. And there are a ton of attributes available going across here. So, going back to our problem, what we're trying to solve, it's and what Upchain could do is it really provides the information more readily, and there's more transparency to the information across department silos. So it's no longer just with the engineer with this information. So you can see the status of these parts and the part number themselves, quantities, things you'd expect to see in a BOM. And if we click on, say, one of these for this clamp that I'm looking at, well, why don't we just get a feel for what the upper level is. So here's the clamp that's in work, and pretty cool is if I want to click in here, I get an in-browser viewer. So again, getting the capabilities out of engineering to the rest of the company. So there's a lot of capabilities here for what you can do with this. There's an exploded view we can do. We could take measurements here, measure some distance or some angles. So say somebody you forgot a dimension, and an engineer forgot a dimension. The people on the shop floor don't have to stop and walk back and try to get that from the engineer. They can take a measurement right here, keep moving. Again, all these things, we're eliminating hurdles in the manufacturing design and manufacturing processes here. So as we look at more of this part here outside of the view, we have a summary of the attributes associated with this. So you can see your revision, you can see notes about it, you can see ERP numbers, and project this is a part of, subsystems, any of the type of attributes you'd want to track with this. There's even the ability to do custom attributes, right? When we'll get to this in a minute, but you can also see here something like a cost, right? So given using the API and a middleware, you can sync this type of information back and forth to an ERP system. So not only are we removing hurdles with engineering knowledge and getting that out to the company, you also can get other systems and the knowledge of purchasing and supply chain information in here back into the system to then go to the engineer who's maybe working on alternative designs. It can have the cost right there as part of that development process. So again, transparency of information is the key here of what we're covering. As we go down, we can see some of the business processes that this has been on, be it an ECO, a change request, or maybe some quality issues that have come up with it. So all centralized and available here. We can also associate non-CAD type documents to this. So if it was a purchased item with a data sheet, it could always be linked and synced right here. Very nice, not have to go and track that stuff down out of some OneDrive or some sort of shared network. All that information would be available right here. Information from the CAD system brought in, center of gravity and such. We have the ability to do categorizations, which is really even more custom attributes to track. An overall history, system generated breadcrumb trail of everything that's changed with this item. A nice where used. Again, so here, if you do decide that you need to change a part, right off the bat, you can get your where used saying, hey, this, what do we call it? Base plate left is actually used in 3 other clamps. So just beware if you're going to decide to add an additional hole to this one, what will that affect? Ability for other people to do markups as part of your ECO process in this, so you can again transfer information. If somebody wants to redline this up and say make this 2 inches longer, you can do that right here within the system. And then upon doing that, there's a very nice compare process, so you can compare 2 different BOMs. There aren't any generated here, but not only can you compare maybe a Rev A and a Rev B BOM of this clamp, but there's also a 3D model compare. So if this was 2 inches longer during that ECO process, it'll overlay those two, and you can see literally in the 3D model the difference between them. And if we have time at the end, maybe I'll generate one to show that. And then here, another big thing that we're talking about is how we break down supply chain barriers and how we improve our supply chain with this. So right here you can see there is a supplier module for every part in the system. And we'll get to this in a minute. I just wanted to give an overview of the types of stuff that you can get here. Let me close down this drawing. So that's the top level, but as we go into each part, all the same information will be here. But what there also is going across is a lot of this information here. So we can see the visualizations. So each of these, like I just showed one for the top level, but there's one for each and every one of these parts if you want to click in it. What there also is automatically generated by the system is translations. Here's another barrier that's removed. Is most of your vendors are probably going to want a non-native type file like an STL or a step file. So right here, these are, if I double click on this, all these different file types are automatically generated by the system each time you do a revision of these parts, right? So very nice. That takes a lot of the busy work of engineering to run save as every time you have to send these parts to a vendor. They're created automatically, including the PDFs, which is what most people want, especially if the drawings. You can see if the part has a drawing attached, if there's a CAD model attached, any other files, and then I just showed the translations. So a lot of information here. And I touched on it earlier, but if this isn't enough information for you, there's the ability to have custom attributes. So in this scenario, you can start to track lead time if it's important for you. Again, improving the manufacturing process here. If you want to sync this back to your ERP system, which is usually where this information lives, you can then have it here also, so that if you are running a release process and something has a long lead time item, you can go and split up your ECOs to release those long lead time items first, get people's eyes on them, get approval, and get those in the system, especially nowadays with, you hear about very long lead time issues at the moment. So, here you can be on top of that and get those things ordered, if they're 3 months out. With this also is what I'm looking at here, scan back over, this is considered our E-BOM. What we also have is an S-BOM, which is pretty nice. And what an S-BOM is a service BOM. So in this E-BOM here, let me expand this back out. If any of these parts are set to recommended spare, that then they get carried over to a service BOM. So here, the application for this is you can create service BOMs for your customer service or your field service techs, right? So they don't have to, they would know exactly which spare parts they should be bringing out in the field for these things. Or your customer service individuals who are getting phone calls, right? And it's like, hey, I lost a screw to this, or I lost a nut. What's my replacement? Right? There's no hunting and pecking or digging that down, right? It's right here and available. Pretty useful. Not only that, but you can also then start to kit these things up and start to offer offer them for sale. So you got spare parts revenue process here. Which would be easier than most traditional ways of establishing those. So we talked about the big picture of what the system is, what the BOM is, all the attributes and fields and information that's available here. We talked about the SBOM. We've talked about the lead time and cost and that type of information being synced from the ERP back here. Another thing that the system has, which helps remove barriers, is a substitute items capability. So to show this, I will take this, let's just say this handle here. I think this is the one I looked at. So we have a handle. As I scroll down, it's a manufactured item, the information about it. When we get down to here with a substitute item, there's nothing filled in here, but let's see, what's the part number on this? MFG 0289. Let's just say, for the sake of being quick here, that we have two handles, right? We have a round and a square one. And so in this details, let's just say that this part can be substituted, here it is, with MFG 02, I'll just say 88, even though that's not a handle, just for the sake of brevity, I'll save that. Right? So now we have a substitute, say a round handle and a square handle. And given what we mentioned earlier, lead time, that we may run into the fact that this lead time is all of a sudden very high for the round, but the square is readily available, and we have an order where we just have to get this out. So right here, if we click the three dots, there's a substitute item. It knows, the system knows that if that's associated to it, I can substitute right here with that substitute item. Change the BOM, update a version of it. We can treat this as a temporary deviation, get the order out, and then substitute back to go back to the round handle if that's the case. But it would go from version 1 to version 2 to version 3, and we'd have a breadcrumb history trail of that. But very nice having this information right here. Again, not having to go back to engineering and being, hey, this handle isn't available. What do we got to do? That information's right here, and people can make their decisions at that time on the fly. It's pretty cool little feature right there that you don't see too often in other PDM systems. One thing I have not covered also, which is useful here, is the CAD plugin that comes as part of Upchain. So here I am in Inventor. I have this clamp open. I've already pre-loaded everything to save time. But what you'll notice here is via this plugin, you have a lot of the same information and capabilities that we saw out in the web application. So in your home landing page, you have your dashboard and project management type things that we saw initially when we logged in. And we have the same tabs going across where we can now look at the BOMs, all the BOMs that are available in your project. And here's my BOM views. So at this point, I can go check out the BOM and the parts that are in the CAD application, bring them down to my local, check them out, work on them, check them back in, just like you'd expect to do in Vault or any other PDM system. But the added benefit of this is, as I talked about, all those attributes and that other bit of information. So, a lot of times you become siloed working as an engineer in the CAD program because you have access to your CAD properties. Your I properties are the things that are important to you: description, part number, material, center of mass, maybe those types of things. But a lot of times you find yourself having to go out to the ERP system or another system to get other information that you're looking for, maybe the vendor or the vendor part number or a cost or a BOM structure and routings and things like that. With this, again, that information, if it's out in the web application, it's brought here, and you can work here essentially. All that information is pushed to you, so it's now pull. You're not going out and chasing it. It's pushed and available to the engineer. As we look across here, you can see, again, as we covered this stuff before, the drawings, translations, documents right here, right? So if there was a data sheet to this, it's right here. You can open it. I don't think there aren't any in this case, but you could go and open it right here without having to go and track it down in your SharePoint or your cloud drive, right? All that other information is pushed to this plugin, and we just talked about that. The assignments to do this, so your tasks also, and then the ability to put this into a cart, and doing that allows you to then perform a business process on it. So you can run your ECOs or your quality checks or your ECRs directly from here also, right? Saves so much time being able to do that, because this is where you're used to working and spending as an engineer, 90% of your time. So that is a quick overview of the plugin and how that that transparency of information can benefit engineering. It's not just benefiting the other side, the other departments. It also carries over here. So finally, what we will show is going back to the web application. And again, we are talking about supplier management, so we should talk about how suppliers can work within this system. And we'll do that by starting with the let me go back to the project dashboard here. We'll start by going to administration. So inside of administration, along with a lot of the stuff that you would use to set up your tenant, including item numbering and document numbering and a lot of those settings and things, along with the users and your teams and your projects, you have suppliers in here, right? So your admin can create and add suppliers in here. If there is no email for that supplier, it's really just meant to be listed as a supplier in the attributes, like a McMaster-Carr or something like that. But if you add an email to any of these suppliers, that gives you the ability to include them in RFQ processes and to communicate with them from within the system. So in this case, I'll go back out to, let me close out of here. I'll go back out to that project we were in, the clamp, I believe. I'll take a look at this clamp right here. And let's just say going back to that handle. Might not be able to add a manufacturer, because it's it's not a purchase component. So this type is a manufactured item. Purchased items are the ones that have suppliers. So let me see if I have this rivet is manufactured. I know one of these is purchased mechanical part. So in here, there is no manufacturer listed, but what I could do is edit this, and I can add the manufacturer, becomes a drop down, and supplier too. So there's also the ability to have manufacturers and suppliers. Very similar, just more and more of a classification type thing. But I'll pick supplier 2 as a supplier for this and save it. So now that that is associated with a supplier, I can start a business process, which one is it? Business processes here. I can say new, and it starts as a investigation request. When this pops up, I could say RFQ, please quote for me. And the type is a supplier RFQ. And it's a supplier workflow. And when we pick that, see why that didn't pick here. Assignee should pick. Yeah, sorry, back. So I figured out what I was missing here is with this part right here, this is a setting for manufacturers, and you have a list of the manufacturers that are available for this component. Down here, what I was missing is the suppliers tab. So with this, you can assign a supplier, and we go back to our list that we were looking at earlier, and I'll add supplier 2. At which point, I can go back to what I was initially doing and create a new supplier RFQ following the supplier workflow. And at this point, this is what I was looking for. Once the supplier has been assigned, it's the only available assignee. So I'll say supplier 2, and please quote, can you quote quantity 100, please? At this stage, you can also add documents or documents that are in Upchain. So in this case, I will add, let's see here. Bear with me while I find something new to attach. There we go. I have a business price quotation document that I can attach, and I'll create and start. At which point an email will go out to that email that's listed in the supplier over in administration, and it looks something like this. Keep from logging out, logging in again. I just have a screenshot of it, right? So test RFQ goes out. There's any attachments that are on here, and then a hyperlink open, so the user can or the supplier can directly link right from the email in. What they will see when they log in is again another screenshot, so I don't have to log out and log in as a different user. But what they would see is a very simplified version. When they log in, they would only see this one part, not all the other stuff that you see out here, because this is all they have permission for. So it would be, you know, the 3D view, so they can rotate, and then they can fill in their information about quantity and part numbers and price, which is further down here. But they'd fill in their information and then send it and finish off the RFQ, and then everyone will be notified going forward. So as a summary, those are some of the ways that you can streamline and remove roadblocks in your supplier chain using Upchain here. At this point, I'll jump out of here. So before we take questions, there's one thing I want to clarify that I misspoke early on. I said when you log in, everyone will have their own tenant. That's not what I meant. I meant is each company would have their own tenant here. So everyone who logs in would be part of that tenant and assigned to teams and projects and have corresponding permissions accordingly. But it's not individual tenants, it's company-wide tenants. All right, thanks.